Hello, and welcome to an episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a longtime journalist with ABC News, CBS, CNN, and so on. And I love asking thought-provoking questions. And if you love thought-provoking questions, you've come to the right place, because my co-host is the esteemed author, David Parker from San Francisco. David's books are Income and Wealth, and most recently, A San Francisco Conservative. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine, Tom. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. I wouldn't do it without you, I promise. So we were recently talking about the provocative topic, or the provocative individual, totalitarian despot, Vladimir Putin. And it was quite an interesting conversation. And that got me thinking about some of the things you've written recently about where our American perspective came from in terms of, conscience, natural law, the invisible hand, and so on. Could you elaborate on that? How, we're a very different nation than Russia under that totalitarian iron fist.
We are almost a different nation from the whole world. Maybe England, our roots are England, British culture and British culture of democracy, and the British history of democracy is our history. Their common law is also part of our common law that emerged over centuries. And there's a few laws, and that's all you need. And that was the original thought of this nation. In 1677 is the statute of frauds. You can't get somebody drunk and take him to a bar and get him to sign over his property. Statute of frauds says you have to have two witnesses, and it has to be in writing. It can't be a verbal promise to transfer land.
It's not a technique you use in your real estate development practice, I take it.
Yeah, I can't just get somebody drunk and give me your property, man. You promised me. You said you would. So,
I'm sure you do not do that. I believe.
You said you're a liar.
Right.
So we have a few laws, and nobody has to have this discussion anymore. Was it in writing, and did you have two witnesses to that document that you were going to transfer the property? And the person receiving the property, is he giving consideration? That's part of a contract.
Yeah.
But we have a few laws, and they've developed over the years. And the United States, at its origin, said that's all you need. That the invisible hand does work. That people pursue their own careers. Everything falls into place much better than anything that can be done by design. One of my big thoughts is that there's no animal species where a leader or a group tell others what to do. That should be our guide. Nobody should be telling anybody anything. You just lead your life and everything falls into place. And a lot of people say, oh no, we can't have that. That the essence of civilization is controlling the economy. You can't let people suffer for mistakes they make. And the US says, yes, you can. And we are a responsible nation, and we are a nation of laws. And it works because we don't have a lot of laws. And it's working less because now we do have a lot of laws. We've become progressive. That's what progressivism is, progressing from the Constitution from limited government to expansive government. Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson, Great Society and the New Deal, that's what it is, a new approach to life. We're going back to Europe. We're going back to aristocracy. We want elite leaders. We want the best people in the country running the country and telling everybody what to do.
Well, it's I think it was last year, our President Biden was, somebody said, you're trying to be another FDR. We're coming out of this challenging time in history. So you're presenting a huge piece of legislation that's going to cost $3 trillion, $4 trillion. But, people decades later obviously still remember FDR and the New Deal, and remember Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society programs. I mean, is there something to be said for those major pieces of legislation?
Yeah. One thing, they failed. Don't do them again. Depressions last about 2 to 4 years. A recession 1 to 2, a depression 2 to 4 over the history of mankind. Only once in the history of mankind did the Depression last about 12 years, our Great Depression. And that's only because at the end of the Depression, which lasted from 1929, which is after the 28 stock market crash, 4 years of depression. In 1933, you can look at the graph, it was over. But in 1932, Franklin Roosevelt ran on the New Deal programs, and he couldn't wait to put them into place. We're going to get us out of this depression. And the Supreme Court said, no, 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 for 2 or 3 years. And he just scared the Supreme Court into, I'm going to throw 6 more justices on here and I'll wipe you out. That's the end of checks and balances. I'm the dictator. Mussolini sent him letters of congratulations, and the Nazi newspapers were congratulating, you finally understand fascism, the community before the individual. We can't believe it's happening here in the United States. All this congratulating. So he turned that depression around, and it lasted another 8 more years and got worse. He rose unemployment from 15 to 25%. Then it got back down. World War II got it out of it because we spent trillions and trillions to do it. But that's not how you get out of a depression. All that money that was spent for World War II was sending battleships that sunk at sea or were abandoned in the jungles, and millions of people died. Yeah, you can get out of depression if you want to do that. You want to spend all the money you have and throw it in the middle of the ocean and sacrifice a few million people. That'll get us out of a depression. That's not what anybody has in mind. And the Great Society, poverty was 15% in 1964. Johnson says it's unconscionable a nation as rich as us have poverty. That needle hasn't budged since 1964. It's still 15%, and it's about 23 trillion in debt, not including Social Security and Medicare.
Well,
it's not solving the problem.
Yeah,
it's zero.
Yeah. If we've learned these lessons, how do you explain some of our representatives like Alexandria Octavia-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, free daycare for everyone, free college for everyone? Where does that come from?
That's you could say the ugliness of politics. The politician goes, what do you want to hear? That's what I believe, and so vote for me. And in fact, I'll get a lot of federal money thrown into your district if you vote for me. We'll add to that debt, and I'll give you free college, and I'll give you free childcare, as you say. Vote for me, and people do.
Yeah,
but I think that will turn around. It's starting to turn around. It doesn't look like it at the moment, but it goes. Donald Trump was the first real smash in your face. He's not the right person to do it, but he got the country to think. Oh, I'm not talking too long, but 2016 election, the polls had 90%, 90% for Hillary. All polls gave her a huge victory. This was a non-issue, and he won because there's a consensus finally occurred in this nation. That's what I'm talking about. That people, they wouldn't tell their friends they're voting for Trump, but when they got in the booth, they voted for him because there are some problems the whole nation cares about. Left and right, we all care about the high cost of healthcare. We all care about poorly performing public schools, and we all care about lax law enforcement. I'm in San Francisco, and they threw out the district attorney because lax law enforcement is going too far. So the whole nation's got the picture, and the consensus is there that we better do something. And Trump was the first step, a failure, but it's the first step. There is a consensus, and maybe we better turn expansive government around and go back to limited government and a little more personal responsibility. Yeah. That's my message.
Yeah, no, I understand. Absolutely. No, it's fascinating to read what you've written about this. I mean, what more important topic could there be when it comes to our nation? I just wanted to throw in real quick, if you're just joining us by video or audio, this is A San Francisco Conservative. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative, and that's also the title of his latest book. I'm Tom Martin, your host and your co-host. And speaking of our former president, Trump, Again, depending on people maybe listening to this episode, more and more seems to be coming out about action that was taken to hold on to that victory, or so he calls it a victory when he ran the second time, ran for re-election. And it just concerns me from what I've heard about sort of disenfranchising people, wiping out millions of votes, coming up with some kind of plan. Do you ever think that kind of behavior is justified? I mean, how sacred is the right to vote, in our nation?
No, I said in my little tirade there a second ago that Trump is not the right person. He's not a good person, and that's fraud and everything, and that's a pure megalomania, all that. But he was the start. 90% for Hillary, yet people voted for him anyway, because let's try something. We all agree we have problems, and the politicians have no intention of solving those problems. That was part of the consensus that I'm talking about. People realize the politicians are not going to solve it. Left and right, they talk the talk, but they're not going to do it. The country thought that try something. Let's try Trump. If a great politician would step forward, left or right, maybe better from the left, because then everybody would be, he would win the election. If Jerry Brown, who spoke in 1974, when people thought he was a crackpot, spoke in such libertarian terms. He says, government is not the answer. We're going overboard in trying to have government solve problems that it can't solve. You're asking too much of government. That was when he ran for president, that's what he was saying. Not when he ran for governor, but when he ran for president, that's what he was saying. Yeah. So that's in the cards of this nation. If a Democrat would come forward and say, we're asking government to do too much.
Yeah. Do you
have my vote? I would vote for that person.
Yeah. Do you think there's still a need or value to having a person come in from another realm? Again, the closest big city to where I live is New York City. And some years ago, Michael Bloomberg was elected mayor, businessman, not a politician, not a career politician. And I get the sense things worked pretty well under that. I tend to vote for Democrats most of the time, but I think Bloomberg did a very good job. There in California, you had a candidate, governor, not so long ago, the Terminator, Arnold. Do you think there's a place for people who are not career politicians to step in and look at things a little differently?
Yes, but the problem is that politics can be beautiful and politicians can be great, but that's a career. And they have to have training and pay their dues. And Schwarzenegger had some right ideas, and he was going to outsource a lot of government work and get the budget back under control. Correct. And Donald Trump had some ideas that were correct. And he surrounded himself with business people. But he wasn't capable. Neither one of them had paid their dues as politicians. And they couldn't do it. Schwarzenegger couldn't control the California Congress, whatever it's called. And Trump couldn't control the federal Congress. He couldn't control it. Didn't have, Lyndon Johnson could. Lyndon Johnson got everything done that Jack Kennedy couldn't do because he could control the Congress. He was a master politician. So that's the job is a career. We want a master politician in office, and Bloomberg did better than expected.
Have you ever thought of running for office yourself?
Certainly not. I have my jazz gigs every night. I can't be running for office.
Okay. I think you'd bring great wisdom to the office. Yeah.
Plus, I'm a San Francisco conservative. In parentheses, not that conservative. I'm not anti-abortion. I'm not anti-gay marriage. I'm not, none of that kind of stuff. I'm a member of the Democratic Party. I'm a member of the ACLU. I'm a San Francisco conservative.
Okay.
Not that bad.
Okay, very good. And why don't you take a couple of minutes to tell people what they'd find when they open the cover of your book titled "A San Francisco Conservative," because
that's what they find. Yeah.
Great read. So tell us a little bit more about that book.
Well, I guess its main message is what I've been talking about. The founding fathers got it right. They didn't just invent, they looked at 5th century Athens. Everyone should read the funeral oration of Pericles by Thucydides in the Peloponnesian War. That was the inspiration for the founding fathers, an open society where our enemies are walking around. We know they're walking around. We're an open society. They can't beat us. They come and they fight for theft, for conquest. We're fighting for an idea. They can't beat us. And they haven't, and they didn't. And Rome moved the law forward in a very creative way. And the 18th century Age of Enlightenment put it together and says, very limited government. And they're right. So I'm inspired by it. I'm inspired by that, and I give examples throughout the book of how inspired that is. It's a book of historical perspective on democracy and freedom. It's not not journalism. It's not current events.
Yeah. Well, that perspective and that going deeper onto these timeless principles is really fascinating. So great. Well, I think we're about out of time, but I just want to thank you for your time, David, and to our viewers, our listeners, just want to let you know that you can pick up David's books, Income and Wealth and the San Francisco Conservative, by visiting his website, davidparkeressays.com, or by going to Amazon. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good.